Hello everybody, this is a video about adding integers. I'll be your host, Mr. Shirley, the Bearded Wonder. Now please make a note as we go through this video. It can be a fairly brief note, but it is important that you have some of this written down. So add a date and title in there. It's important for keeping it organized and everything, and it looks really pretty. Now our learning goal for this is to consider different methods for adding integers, and we'll consider a few more in future days as we go through the unit. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is a somewhat real-world situation to think through the concepts of adding integers. So take a moment, think that through, try and get an answer for that. So the day began with a temperature of -5 and then rose by 9 degrees in the afternoon. What was the afternoon temperature? Okay, and many of you could probably figure this one out, most of you I'd say. But you all may have slightly different ways of doing it. So I'm going to introduce a way that will be similar to how we'll be adding fractions. Sorry, integers. We are doing integers in this video. So the day began with a temperature of -5, so we start at -5, and then rose by 9 degrees, so we add 9 to our number. Okay, and what was the afternoon temperature? You can add those together. So if you start at -5 and add 9, you would end up with 4. Again, many of you would have kind of figured that out using possibly a variety of different methods. I'm going to throw degrees Celsius in there, even though it wasn't anywhere else in the question because we're Canadian and we like Celsius. So on the next slide here, before we go on, thank you, Mr. Shirley, for reminding me. As we go through this and we're using different signs sometimes near each other, I just want to differentiate a little bit between why we're using them. Okay, so the one in the middle here I'm going to call an operational sign. That's indicating something like adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Okay, the one that's in front of the digits here I'm going to call an integer sign. I sort of made that up. I don't know if that's really very mathematical, but if it takes off, you heard it here first. Okay, so this would be -5, for example. You wouldn't read this as subtract 5. Okay, because it's not really a subtraction operation. It's just telling you where that number is on a number line, whether it's above or below 0 and how much. Okay, so we're going to consider this addition using a number line first, but then as we go through it and you get more comfortable with it, feel free to not use the number line anymore. It's up to you. Okay, so 6 plus -3. One way to consider this is that we're starting at 6, and then we're going 3 in a negative direction. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, we go in a negative direction, right down like that. So we moved in a negative direction. So that equals 3. Now, one thing I'd like you to notice as we're doing this is that if we had just done 6 subtract 3, we would get the same answer. And that's exactly part of my point that I'm getting at. Okay, so there's different ways to look at some of the addition that we're doing, but just keep in mind that they're all related. Okay, on to the bottom one here. And again, remember, if I'm going too fast for you, please feel free to pause the video or watch it again. You could never get enough of my voice. So we'll start at -3. And then we're adding 5, so we're moving 5 in a positive direction. Okay, so +5, so we're moving that in a positive direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we're moving up to +2. And again, remember which direction we're going, right? Up here we had a negative sign in front, so we're moving in a negative direction. Here we've got a positive sign, so we're moving in a positive direction. Okay, and then we want to move 7 in a negative direction from our +2. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I'm just going to, we're going to kind of move it down here. Okay, and then we end up with equals -5. So that's where you end up. After you start at -3, then go 5 in a positive direction, then go 7 in a negative direction. And as we go through the addition here, some of the questions in the homework as well will involve a number line. Feel free to use it or not, depending on how comfortable you are with the adding of fractions. All right, now what I'd like you to do, you can feel free to draw yourself a number line to do some of these questions, but I would like you to take a moment and try and answer them yourself before I go through some of the answers. Okay, so please take a moment and do that. Okay, So as we're going through these, just keep in mind some of the relation to other operations, and I'll point it out a few times as we go through. So if we start at 10, then we move 5 in a negative direction, okay, we should end up with positive 5. Now again, just to kind of prove a point here, if we do 10 subtract 5, we would also get positive 5 because we're kind of doing the same thing when we move in a negative direction like this. Okay, so on to the next one. If we start at 1 and then move 4 in a negative direction, we'll end up down at negative 3. If we start at negative 6 and then move 2 in a positive direction, we will move on up to negative 4. If we start at negative 6 but move 2 in a negative direction, so we're getting even more negative, we would end up with negative 8. All right, so please think these through a little bit. Try out the homework I've provided, and we will talk more during our meetings this week to make sure everyone's comprehending everything okay. And I want to make sure, because integers unfortunately are something you will have to do in many math courses from here on out, so it is something you need to be comfortable with. And so please feel free to ask any questions that you might have at our meetings, classroom, or email, just like usual. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.